From the southeastern corner of western North Carolina, this is Folklore. Even at the county level, it's a bit surprising these days to hear a candidate for political office sing the praises of serving alongside members of the opposing party. But that's Ray Gasperson for you. He was a Democratic county commissioner a few years back when his party held every seat, and then when he had to share power, and then when he was outnumbered 4-1 by his Republican colleagues. If there's anybody qualified to weigh in on what works best and what needs fixing in county politics, he's your guy. And there was a time not so long ago when the voters of Polk County seemed to agree with that assessment. Not so for the past couple of elections. After serving for several terms, Ray lost his bid for re-election in 2020 and again in 2022, both times by about 600 votes, or 2.5%. Maybe because those races were relatively close, he's asking for your support again. Ray explains why he just can't get enough of county politics, even though Republican legislatures in Raleigh are doing their best to change the way things work, during an interview recorded earlier this month at the Saluda Library. Ray Gasperson, welcome back to Folklore.
Thank you, James. And by the way, thank you for doing this. I mean, this is not like you're earning a living doing this. You're doing this for the good of our community. And that means a lot to me and a lot of people.
Well, thank you very much. I have a lot of fun doing it. Yeah, and just so people know, one of the reasons I do this is because I want to know more about the politics and the culture of Polk County. Yeah. And so I have to make an effort to go find people to talk to. And I figure, well, why not just share what I'm learning with people? So I don't think you need much of an introduction, but there are going to be some listeners, some people new to Polk County who aren't aware of your history in Polk County government. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure.
And then we'll talk about why you're running again.
Good. But before I start that, because I may not do this before this is over, I just want to thank all the supporters I've had. I have had an outpouring of supporters here in this election cycle. Had a big fundraiser event about 2-3 weeks ago, like near 150 people showed up. It was fantastic.
150 people for anything
is big in Polk County, and it really warmed my heart. We had great music and it was just a great, wonderful location and a magic evening that happened. I want to thank my family for putting up with me for all these years. Now 16 years I've been involved from the time I was first elected to where we're at right now. Especially want to thank my wife, who is, she struggles with me doing this at times, but she's supportive. I want to thank Libby Morris and Karen Pack for stepping up to run this time. Two remarkable ladies who've poured themselves into this campaign in a huge way. And I want to say something too. I'm grateful that my wife and I own a farm in Green Creek, and I have the privilege of living in this incredible county with the beauty we have. And believe it or not, having the farm gives me the opportunity, because I help take care of the horses. I'm not an avid equestrian person myself, although we have a horse farm. My wife brought horses with her when we got married, so here we are now 51 years later still doing this. But I enjoy the horses, taking care of them and doing hay work and so forth. But it gives me a lot of time to think while I'm out there doing all this, because I'll spend 30, 40 or more hours a week working on the farm, and I work out a lot of issues when I'm doing that.
I appreciate that, because I do a lot of thinking while I'm walking the dog.
Yeah.
Just being outside. Polk County is a good place to be outside. Right?
It sure is. It's absolutely. And yeah, I'm a native of Western North Carolina. I grew up in Asheville, Buncombe County. We lived there until we moved here down to Polk 23 years ago now. I had an opportunity to do so. The year I turned 50, I told my wife, if we're ever going to make this change, we better do it now. And we did. We found our wonderful farm out at Green Creek. Now I have all of our adult children here and my 2 grandkids. My oldest grandkid is now off to college, but our family is all based here. And I'm running in so many ways because I'm so passionate about protecting about what Polk County is all about for myself and my family as a whole, as I am for the whole community.
Okay, well, let's get into that why you're running again, because you've served before.
Yes,
You've seen what can and cannot be done by a county commission in
right.
terms of doing the things that this county needs, standing up for the county, representing the county. I'm guessing you're running because you're not confident that the current commissioners are doing what you think they should be doing.
I'm not saying that they're off the rails not doing things. Obviously, I think we have a dedicated group of guys up there. I don't think they're doing anything that's harmful to the county. I think I could add a great deal if I somehow am elected again. I'm used to being on the board. In the past, I've served a total of 12 years. I've been through 4 elections, won 4 elections, and I had 2 that were not successful, the last 2. But I believe Polk County is better served when we have a mix on the board, not all from one party. You have a better dynamic on the board when you have, if there's 1 or preferably 2 and 3 or 2 and 3, however, that mix makes a major difference. And I've seen that because I've been on the boards through the years. I went through a period where we were all of one party when I first came on, and then it shifted to I was chair for 2 years, and then there was a 3-2 split, and then it went to for 8 years it was a 4-1. I was the one all those years. And even during that period when I was the lone of my party, I had significant influence through that period. And it makes a big difference. I think the concern that folks have right now is you have all of one party on the board, and they think, well, what's going on? Are they making decisions behind the scenes? And I don't know if there's anything to say they are, but I think you're going to, one of the biggest complaints I hear, frankly, of folks is, boy, the meetings sure are fast. They're sometimes well under 30 minutes. If they get over 30 minutes, it seems a rarity. And that gives the impression that things are all being decided ahead of time. I have no evidence of that. I'll say that. But I know what would happen if I were sitting on the board. I would be asking a whole lot more questions. I know that because I've always done that. I think it's important to ask probing questions of whatever issues before the board, because that, not only for my own knowledge, but it puts it out in the public. And now that we have the meetings being streamed for those who are watching online, they can get a better understanding of what's going on and the issues. If you have more probing and insightful questions being asked, and hopefully anything that happens up in our local Tri-Daily bulletins will be reported.
I want to pick up on something you referred to earlier about the need for variety on the board and diversity on the board. So do you think that the times when the board was split like 2-3 was actually a better way of running the county than it was all Democrats?
Absolutely. And I can give a prime example of this. In 2011, there was like I say, as I said earlier, there was a 2-year period I was the chair, and I had on the board with me the late Renee McDermott and Cindy Walker. Cindy's still very vibrant, but we've lost Renee. Then we also had Ted Owens and Tom Pack on the board during that period. And anybody knows the history of the board, Ted and Tom could be challenging at times for me, but they were passionate for what they were doing. During that period, we spent weeks, if not months, working through a subdivision ordinance. It was part of the larger UDO effort that was being made, which that effort tended to be a very contentious, just that term,
the Unified
Development Ordinance. But the larger section, the first part that we went through, was a subdivision ordinance. And with me being in the chair position, I kept pushing. I said, let's pass this before we try to pass the whole document because I could tell this could be a problem to pass everything. And indeed, after many, literally months of working on the subdivision ordinance, it came before the board and it went before public hearings as we do and so forth. And in the end, having that dynamic of that 3-2 split actually made a strong subdivision ordinance, which was passed. I never thought it would pass unanimously. I did not think Ted and Tom would vote. The night of the meeting, Tom Packin specifically, and again, both of those gentlemen are now deceased, and that's unfortunate. But he had a few points that he wanted to go over, and there's some minor changes that were included right there in that meeting. And when the vote was taken, it was unanimous. And since 2011, that subdivision ordinance has stood the test of time. And that subdivision ordinance has stopped any new major subdivisions from coming into the county. A lot of people don't realize that. We have, prior to that, especially prior to 2008, we had major big subdivisions coming into the county, such as Wrights Creek, the subdivision that the Irish brothers put together next to where Trine International is now, and several others. And many of these subdivisions had smaller lot sizes in them. They may have had a lot of open space, but they had a lot of 1 acre or less lots and so forth in the county. It was scaring people to death in this county. We were going to be overrun by major subdivisions. But with the current subdivision ordinance that we have right now, it mandates that if you have a major subdivision, if you're above, you can have a minor subdivision up to 8 lots currently. It's being reviewed to see if we bring that down to 5 lots. And those 4, in this case, if they turn out to be 5 or if they're still 8, they have to be a minimum of 1 acre. And there are some that have happened, 1 acre subdivisions that have happened. But if you get above that minor subdivision, then it goes into the major subdivision part of our subdivision ordinance. And in that case, if there's no water and sewer to the property, then it has to be a minimum of 5 acre parcels. If you have one or the other, in this case, there is the potential to have a public water out in the county, which there is, especially along Highway 9, then it would be a minimum of 3 acres. But when you think about it, for a big developer to come in, those lot sizes are too big to justify creating a major subdivision in the county. Therefore, we have stopped major subdivisions. People are scared because they drive down Highway 9, especially in the Boiling Springs, and they see the explosion of growth thinking, oh, that's coming our way. Well, a major developer's not going to come and do it if they're not going to make money. And so, in essence, I see what happened during that time period when we had that 3-2 split on the board. If nothing else, we did that. Also, we did other things that really proved to be very beneficial to the county, too, through that period.
Well, you're clearly proud of the time you did spend.
Very much.
Yeah. And you're going to appeal to people to say, hey, it's time to put a little bit of diversity back on the board at the very least. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. Kind of sums up.
It does. And I have a very strong voting record to show where I've been. And the top, and I'll say this, the top of my list, as it has been from the time I was first elected in 2008, is protecting the beautiful rural nature of our county. I ran that first time because of the concerns that were being raised across the whole county of all these big subdivisions coming in.
Well, and they're still coming into surrounding counties.
Yes. And there's a constant of people moving here. Polk County's been discovered. Certainly this whole upstate South Carolina and western North Carolina has been discovered in a big way. And oftentimes folks come into Asheville or Hendersonville or Spartanburg or Greenville, and then they discover Polk, and then they say, well, this is the best of all. And like so many who show up here, they come into Polk and they if they buy property or a house or whatever, they say, well, how do we stop? How do we stop any further growth? And that's bipartisan across the board. You hear that? I think we all agree on that.
Yeah, I've never heard anybody disagree about that. I mean, there are some arguments over where we should do certain types of things. I think that a lot of folks who are running the county say, well, we need to support less expensive housing, but we're going to leave that to Columbus, Saluda, and Tryon. And that can create a little bit of tension too, because
absolutely.
But anyway, that's getting a little bit off topic. I'm interested in what the Board of Commissioners should be doing to protect not just the rural nature and the environmental magic that is Polk County, but the other aspects of governing this county. And in the last couple of years, the state legislature has imposed several things on the county against the wishes, and sometimes against the explicit wishes of the Board of Commissioners, even though all 5 are Republicans and the state legislature is run by Republicans. It seems like being on the same party ticket doesn't necessarily help when it comes to standing up to Raleigh. And I don't think it would be any better if there were all Democrats or 3-2 split or whatever. But what do you think about what Polk County can do to push back on things like the partisan school board elections or splitting the congressional districts into, these type of things that were imposed upon the county without any consultation?
Well, you're right. It's the state legislature really, no matter what the wishes are locally, you can have, in this case, the state senator based up in Henderson County, and when it includes Polk in his district.
We're talking about Tim Moffitt.
Yes, that's Tim Moffitt. He has obviously pushed and done things. You wonder, who is he talking to? If he's not talking to our local current Board of Commissioners, who is he talking to come up with what he's done? And it's been even, he's impacted the municipalities on and shifted when their elections are held and given those members of the boards an extra year just so they could shift it in. And now you have these really long ballots that we're going to have this time, including some municipal election. But, Polk County is a subdivision of the state, and we have to recognize that the state legislature has dominance over what we do. And there's a lot of things we could do locally, obviously, but they can sure dominate, and it's been proved decisively with what Tim Moffitt did with the school board. And I don't know, maybe there's some who like it, but boy, most everybody I talk to, I've never talked to anybody who thinks that we should have partisan school boards. And even shifting our terms here in this election, 3 seats are up. All 3 will get 4-year terms as a change from what we've had in the past.
Yeah, we used to have staggered terms.
We did. We had the 2 top vote getters had a 4-year term. Third place had a 2-year term. I supported that, even though 2 of my elections I won, I was in third place and got a 2-year term, and it seemed like a hassle. But I'll be honest with you, when I was first elected and got a 2-year term, it made me a better commissioner because I had to get out and talk to people immediately and do things I could do because I thought, well, I may only be here for 2 years. And I was very successful. And I was, in that case, when the 2010 election happened, I was one of the few on the Democrat side who actually won here in Western North Carolina because of the actions I'd been taking, and people did recognize it locally in Polk County. So, but, when we had the prior system, we had 3 seats come up every 2 years. Then there was a potential, if we had a rogue board of commissioners, then the public had an opportunity after 2 years to bring in 3 new commissioners. And I can give examples what I want right now of other counties that happened. But if you have 3 who come in with a 4-year term, you're stuck. You can't do anything for 4 years in your county. So that's been taken away from us. And I regret that. I mean, I was a strong supporter of that. But here we are, 3 seats at this time, all getting 4-year terms in 2 years from now, 2 seats will come up, and they'll get 4-year terms.
I'm just wondering, how did this come about? How did the relationship between Polk County and Raleigh, I guess through Tim Moffitt and Jake Johnson, our state rep, how did it get to the point where we're not even asked anymore what we'd like?
It's all power grab. That's what it is. It's authoritative type governing. It's not coming and talking and having public meetings and discussions. Just at a Board of Commissioners meeting, coming and having that discussion. They should do that. They should, and to make a change, unfortunately, is going to take a major change with the state legislature.
Now, I asked some Republicans about this, and they said, well, James, you can't criticize your political allies all the time. You can't be pushing back. You can't be a pain in the butt because sometimes you want something out of them. For instance, Lake Adger Dam, is costing millions of dollars to rebuild. So we have to have a good relationship with the state legislature. So in other words, we have to sort of roll over every now and then and accept some stuff because there are other important things that we still are getting out of the state. Does that argument hold water for you?
Not for me. It never has. And I've always been an independent thinker on all the issues. I've never let any other political actors or leaders tell me how I should vote. I mean, they can tell me all they want, but I'm going to still vote my mind. I am what you see. Through all the years I was on the Board of Commissioners, I have to admit, I developed a really tough political skin, and I voted what I felt was best for the county as a whole. There's no way I would, despite the, oh my God, they're going to take funds away from us at the state legislature, that I would vote to support something that I knew that in the long term would be detrimental to our county. Those who do that should not be serving. That reminds, could I quote James Carville here real quick?
Sure.
Why not? I bet you haven't had him quoted before.
No.
James Carville said, ultimately, it boils down to 2 things with people involved in politics: those who want to do something and those who want to be something. We can come up with lots of examples of those who want to be something. They want to be more politically powerful, perhaps financially powerful. They just want to make a big name for themselves. I've seen it on the Board of Commissioners. You see it clearly in state political held offices, and you see it on the national scene all the time. I'm firmly with those who want to do something, to do what's right. And there's a vast difference between the two. I've taken votes when I was on the Board of Commissioners. I thought, you know what, this could impact me in the next election, but this is what I believe, and I'm going to do this. And I did. I voted that way, even with some people saying, Ray, you ought not do that. But I did, because I want to do at all times, do what's right, do what's correct for the long-term good of the county. Throughout my whole time on the Board of Commissioners, I would always think, what is the impact of this action, not only now, but 5 and 10 or more years down the road? Because I can assure you, what happens with various things that would happen, votes that would be taken on the Board of Commissioners, you think, well, this is just temporary. This will be corrected as soon as possible. Guess what? It typically doesn't. It sticks. And it may be a bad decision or a weak decision, but it tends to stay with us. That's the reason when we had the subdivision ordinance is standing the test of time now. I think perhaps it would be tweaked along the way as it should be, but it's sticking and it's holding.
What about the need for compromise?
Absolutely. I do. I compromise. And this is the other thing. The way I view myself as an elected leader is that you do work to find common ground. Sometimes, if you can't find common ground, then you just have to explain it greatly. And I would do that oftentimes. I might be the lone dissenting vote many times in the past. But I just wouldn't vote that way. I'd give a long explanation and oftentimes ask that I be quoted directly in the minutes. But once the vote's taken, it's time to move on. Don't just have sour grapes forever. Say, okay, I believe the majority should rule, but the minority should always be honored and not gone after in any way negatively.
Well, I like this notion that you have to move on. Is that there is no point in trying to rehash an issue which you're just going to lose on.
Yeah.
Well, once the vote has been taken. And when it comes to things like, say, the nonpartisan school board, we lost that battle. And there's absolutely nothing we can do about it.
Well, it could come back. Now, it may at some point in time, you have a state legislature. It may take, in this case, the Democrats having the House and the Senate and with a governor's seat. And it could be a local bill reintroduced to go back to nonpartisan. It could happen.
If we are very patient.
Being very patient, yes. That may be and we may learn to live with what we have with a partisan school.
Well, I think it was very interesting that when the decision was made a couple of years ago to make the school board partisan, a lot of people thought, and I certainly thought, that would mean all the races would be heavily contested. Well, this time around, there's basically one incumbent Democrat not being challenged, one independent who is being challenged by one Democrat, and another Democrat being challenged by one Republican. So the Republicans didn't line up to challenge every seat.
No. Interesting, huh?
Yeah, I mean, I think that says a lot about the individuals, the incumbents.
True, it does. It does.
And maybe it suggests that we just haven't, things haven't changed enough. In other words, people are relatively happy with the current composition of the board, so there wasn't a rush of challengers. But school boards across the state have had a lot of experience with the introduction of partisan school boards, and it's almost never gone well in the long run.
It doesn't. It doesn't. It truly should swing back to being nonpartisan. Really, that really should.
Board of Commissioners has a role to play in supporting the school board. Right now, I think the school board receives from the county about $4,500 per student, which is about halfway between zero and which some counties give their schools, and $9,000, which is what the wealthier counties in the center of the state pay. I'm understanding that the school board might be asking for more money because times are tough.
Well, and the state legislature tends to keep cutting what the state funds the local school.
Right. Several $100,000 are being transferred to private schools.
That too.
If you are back on the commission, what's your approach to Polk schools?
I fully support. I think it's a backbone of our county. We have a tradition of having excellent schools, rating at or near the top on survey after survey. We don't want to lose that tradition here.
Would that justify raising taxes in order to support them at a higher level?
If it came down to it, if there's one that I had to say, yeah, as much as I'm a fiscal conservative, and it was fully justified by the superintendent and other school personnel, that I think we have to accept. We have to do what's necessary to keep the excellence in our schools here.
All right. Is there anything else that you consider a priority for your own agenda if you do get back on the board?
My top priorities is transparency in all government activities in a big way, and I've battled that in past years. When I was on the board, when I didn't think things were transparent enough, I would bring them up in meetings and so forth. A top priority again for me is having a sound and a fiscally conservative spending as best we can. You brought up about the schools. Well, we'll have to cross that bridge if we have to. There's just no way around that. And then for me, I want to make sure that our local law enforcement is properly funded. It's not, a lot of folks don't really realize, but the board of commissioners control the purse strings, so to speak, for the sheriff's office. We don't tell them the policies or what the sheriff should or should not do, but we do control the monies. And that doesn't mean that you just hand them everything they want every time they ask, but to ask the proper questions and to get to the bottom of why do they need the funding levels that they do. But I do strongly support our local law enforcement. Obviously, our schools, our public health, and our county employees. And, these are challenging times with keeping county employees, finding those who fit working as a county employee, and they need to be supported as they should be through proper benefits and salaries.
Are we not quite maybe doing enough on that front?
Well, they always have a long list of openings, I'll put it that way. And it's just challenging. It's always challenging. We have good stability with the county manager, who I think he is certainly, as time goes on, he's grown into that job in a great way, and he's a local guy, and so he's worked out very well. A lot of people don't realize that the average term of a county manager across the state is only about 2 years. That's a lot of disruption. But fortunately, here in Polk, over the last 16, 17 years, we've had a lot of stability. We've only had 2 county managers. That puts us in a strong position.
All right. Well, that's all the questions I've got for you. So thanks very much for finding the time.
Can I make one final statement?
Please do.
Okay. And I'll just say, finally, I truly do believe that I'm the candidate with the most experience and knowledge on how our county government works. During these challenging and uncertain times, I will put that experience to work to make sure that we have a stable, transparent, and financially sound local government. And I will continue to stand up for the health, education, and safety of our citizens and for protecting the magnificent rural nature of the county we live in. And I ask for and appreciate your vote, everybody's votes. So thank you, James. This has been great.
Thank you, Ray. You can tell Ray's done that before, right? By now, absentee ballots for this election will be available from the county elections office. Early voting begins October 17th. The state doesn't allow us to vote straight Democrat or Republican with one checkbox anymore, and I think that's a good thing. It's my hope that by providing these interviews, I'm making it easier for voters to evaluate the candidates better than they could by just reading campaign literature or the written responses to a daily bulletin survey, if they offer one this year. Please let me know what you think of these interviews by sending an email to jamesh@folklore.com. And thanks so much for listening.